All right, thank you, guests, and thank you, candidates, for joining me for the Maine House Candidate Forum for Districts 53, 54, and 55. We have 5 of our candidates here. Unfortunately, one of them had an emergency that just came up 20 minutes ago, so Peter Lewis will not be with us, but we do have all of our other candidates here, and so I'm going to have them wave when I mention their district. So District 53, is Jeff and Allison. Thank you. Thank you. They represent Arrowsic, Dresden, Georgetown, Phippsburg, Woolwich, and a part of Richmond that they're going to fight with somebody else about. District 54 is Denise and Toni. Give us a wave. They're Topsham. And then Seth is our representative from District 55, and which is Bowdoin, Bowdoinham, Richmond, and Swan Island.
Almost all of Richmond.
Almost all of Richmond.
Little slice.
Except they ceded just a little bit to those guys. So so everybody knows this is a forum that we're doing for you folks. It's going to be 90 minutes. It's going to go till 6:30. How it works is the candidates are going to have a 3-minute opening statement. Then we'll get into questions, and then each of the candidates will have a 2-minute closing statement. For most of the questions, they'll have 90 seconds to answer with a 30-second extra to add something later on. You'll see how it goes. We'll explain it. You'll love it. I do want to thank our sponsors, our Chamber Cornerstone sponsors, for making this forum possible. So thank you to Midcoast Parkview Health, Priority Real Estate, Remax Riverside, Bath Savings, Barnard Financial, Riley Insurance, and Sightlines. And with that, we're going to get going here. So I'm going to find wherever I put my phone, because that's what I'm going to be timing on. All right, Jeff, opening statements, 3 minutes. You are on the clock. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Cory, for putting this together, and I'd like to thank the Southern Maine Chamber for sponsoring this. My name's Jeff Pierce, live in Dresden. I'm a lifelong Mainer. I own a construction company for 30 plus years now. Recently, well, I say recently, it was 4 years ago, I got my real estate license. They kind of go hand in hand. I've served on many community boards, Dresden Planning Board for 22 years, Dresden Budget Review for 7. A school board member for RSU2, filling a slot. It was vacated. Been on the Mid-Atlantic Fisheries Management Council for a 3-year term as an advisor. I was the co-chair for NOAA's Technical Expert Working Group for Habitat for the Eastern Seaboard for all rivers and streams for alewives, shad. And I'm married to a lovely wife, got 2 great children, and a bunch of pets. Sometimes I get a lot of cats because people think I like them, and I do. So that's who I am, and we'll let you keep on going.
Wow, there you go. That was fantastic. That is Jeff, everyone. All right, Allison, you are up next. Your 3 minutes begins now.
All right. So I'm Allison Hepler. I live in Woolwich, and I'm running for re-election to serve the people of House District 53. I'm running because I believe that everyone can make a difference. It's what I try to tell my students and to demonstrate that for them, both in my work, 9 years now on the Woolwich Select Board, and also in the state legislature. I've been lucky enough to teach at University of Maine at Farmington. I teach history for 25 years so far. Like I said, everyone can make a difference. As a legislator, I will tell you that the best ideas I get come from talking with the people I represent. And that's been like a surprise medical billing prohibition for emergency room visits that went through Denise's committee, a research and development tax credit for small businesses, a lobster license for a recreational lobster license for disabled veterans. Everyone can make a difference. Our frontline essential workers during our pandemic, frontline healthcare workers, first responders, grocery store clerks, childcare teachers, also businesses looking for workers, businesses trying to reopen, someone whose life was suddenly changed and they needed social services for the first time in their lives. It's been my honor to work with them this past year and a half, to work with you, to advocate for you. And your voices have been heard. Believe me, they've been heard, and it's made a difference. Everyone can make a difference, and we need everybody. And so I'm excited to be here. Thanks for hosting this, to talk about the kind of leadership we're going to need in the next couple of years. It's going to be real tough. It's going to be a challenge, but we're going to be talking about some of those issues this evening. So I look forward to it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Seth, you are up next. Your time begins right now.
Great. Thank you, Cory, for putting this on. Excellent event. It was great to talk with you earlier as well when you did candidate interviews. My name is Seth Berry. I do represent Bowdoin, Bowdoinham, and almost all of Richmond and beautiful Swan Island on the Kennebec. I grew up in Bowdoinham, went away for a while, was a teacher in inner city New York, actually, after college. But I came home and have lived here for the 20 years since, first working in education and then in business. I work at a small business in Richmond, a biotech firm, where we really are engaged in the economy of tomorrow. And I believe that when it comes to our economy, that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that the only real prosperity is shared prosperity, where we are working together. I think Maine has incredible opportunities and incredible potential that is unrealized, and that only by working together we can truly realize. I'm a strong believer that in order to create sustained shared prosperity, that education is critical. I'm very proud to be a Giraffe Award winner. That giraffe behind me is from the Maine Children's Alliance for those who stick their neck out for kids. I have worked, as many of you know, very hard on energy issues and telecommunications issues. I think those are critical to our future. And healthcare is also very, very important. I'm proud to have worked with actually Denise's committee in a previous iteration to prevent insurance companies from imposing lifetime and annual caps on coverage. When we need it most, that's when insurance should be there most. But for a while, that was not the case. But Maine did it, and then it became the law of the land as part of the Affordable Care Act. I'm very proud of that. And I think that we do need to get our arms around the healthcare crisis and the climate crisis if we're going to do well in the future. I also think that Maine has opportunities in both areas. And finally, community. We have to build community. That's really what I'm proudest of in Bowdoinham, in Richmond. We have very strong communities in Maine, and that at the end of the day is what I think our greatest strength is. So I'm very interested in talking about how local businesses and communities can lift one another up, how we can work together to realize our true potential. And
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Seth. Thank you so much. Denise, you are up next for District 54. Floor is yours. Oh, Denise, you are muted. You are muted. Congratulations, you won the first You're Muted award.
There we go. Okay, I've got the You're Muted award. That's
Yes, congratulations.
I love it.
I'm going to keep giving it out all night. You're fine.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Cory, for this opportunity because, as I said when you interviewed me, in a pandemic, it's really hard for us to have opportunities to talk to people about what we care about. And I want to thank the Chamber and all of your sponsors for helping this to happen. And I also want to thank my opponent for being here and giving people an opportunity to hear both of us and the other candidates. I'm very, very proud to represent Topsham. I've represented Topsham now for 6 years, and it's been a wonderful experience. I am very proud of my fellow Saginaw County legislators. We worked together since we were adjourned in March. We've met about once a month, and we've met with the sheriff, Joel Murray, and with our EMA, Emergency Management Association director in Saginaw County, to talk about the issues facing people here in our area during this very difficult time. And so I'm very proud to serve and have that opportunity to help people. For 6 years, I've served Topsham in the Maine House, and I've worked really, really hard to be a voice for all of the people of Topsham, not just the Democrats, but Republicans, unenrolled folks, and anyone who contacts me, whether they're an enrolled voter or not. And I've worked hard to be a voice for all the people of our town. Before I was in the legislature, I served on our school board and I served on the Municipal Finance Committee. In the legislature, I've served on the tax committee. I've served on the appropriations and financial affairs committee. And in this last session, I chaired the health coverage, insurance, and financial services committee, working on important bills to reduce the cost of pharmaceuticals and of healthcare in general. My priority as the representative for the people of Topsham has been to be accessible and to be available to everyone. My home phone number is public, and I do return calls and emails. And even in normal times, I enjoy participating in civic activity in our town, and it's meeting my neighbors and friends at various venues in Topsham. That's been very difficult during this time, but I hope sometime next year I'll get back to having the opportunity to see folks at those kinds of events. Thanks very much, and look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. All right. And then last but certainly not least, we have Toni. Toni, welcome.
Hi, Cory. Thank you. Thank you very much for putting this on and including all of us. Just like Denise said, it's been really hard kind of trying to get out and speak with people. So we appreciate these opportunities. So my name's Toni Bashinsky. I am going to be representing District 54, so just Topsham. This is my first time in anything political ever. I've never done anything like this before, so I have no experience or background with it. I am married, I am a mom, I have a young family, I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. I homeschool, I am a notary, I do weddings and my day job. On top of all of that, I work for a great company out of Auburn as an inside sales executive. And I do a lot with local businesses here and also up and down the East Coast. So I get the opportunity to speak with a lot of businesses around. For me, because I don't have much experience in this, I obviously am new. So I have, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. Let me get back on track. Hold on. I'll just jump to something. So basically the things that I would like to deal with as I kind of navigate through this, the main things for me and the things that I've heard from people as I've been talking to them are small businesses trying to get supports for them. I've spoken to many owners. They felt a little left behind with the COVID stuff. So that's lesson learned for the future if we ever deal with this stuff again. Something else that's been huge, I've been hearing for people with this education, kids, and special needs and special services for those kids, and those services being taken away, especially in this time with COVID. It seems kind of unacceptable to me. So those are things I'd like to try to protect and regain. And then also a concern of mine is I really would like to try to get some younger families up in Maine. Maine is a really aging state with high taxes. So to figure out new ways like opening up more access to trade schools and stuff like that would be phenomenal, especially for our kids in high school, to give them the opportunity to be able to have access to those options before they make the choice of whether or not they want to go out into the world and just get any job anywhere or go to college or anything like that. And then of course, reducing the budget. I'm extremely fiscally conservative individual. I graduated from UMaine Augusta with a degree in financial services. So being fiscally responsible is very important to me. And then also bringing community back to Topsham. I feel like it lacks a little bit. So to be able to kind of bring that family feeling back, especially once, you know, everything with COVID hopefully disappears, would be great. That would be just something really awesome to try to reach toward in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Toni. And thank you all. That was a wonderful getting to know you. And so we're going to get into the question and answer section. The question and answer section, just so everyone in the audience knows, the candidates have 90 seconds to answer, and then I will signal them. So if you see me putting my thumbs up or interrupting and that sort of thing, that's a little note to them, because some people in the first forum, I kept using the thumbs up and people were like, you really like that answer? And I was like, it's not what I meant. And it's gets all confusing. So it's a lot easier when it's in person. But anyway, so we are going to go through some questions so you can get to know these folks a little bit better. And so we're going to start actually the order this time. We're going to go Seth is going to be first, and then it'll go Seth, Toni, Denise, Allison, and Jeff. And so we have one specific question that I sent to the candidates prior to, so they had an idea because it is rather long. But I do want to read it for everybody so that you know, I promise not all questions are this long. Of the three, the subject is property tax. So Seth, you'll get 90 seconds here, and let me just read the question. Of the three primary tax buckets, income tax, sales tax, and property tax is the most regressive and strikes the hardest on those that can least afford it. Of the three property tax segments, municipal budgets, education budgets, and county budgets are the least discussed, but are very important as they account for the district attorney's offices, emergency dispatch, sheriff's departments, county jails, and other vital services. Please comment as to how you, by serving in the state legislature, might assist in alleviating this tax burden on the local communities and counties as they are property tax dependent. Some examples might be the development of alternative funding sources, programs to encourage common service consolidations between local governments, lifting state requirements, more direct assistance. Again, all with the goal of alleviating the property tax burden. Seth, that is teed up for you. Your 90 seconds begins now.
Thank you, Cory. Well, I really appreciate this question because like Denise, I have served on the taxation committee, and starting around 2011, when I first came onto that committee, we really insisted on having that conversation because the property tax is far too relied upon by state and local government. And for local government, there is no choice. That's the only real tool they have. But the state, by doing more of its share for schools and by doing more of its share for roads, can help to alleviate that burden. If you think of the property of the state tax system, state and local tax system as a three-legged stool, there's sales, there's income, there's property. We lean far too heavily on the property tax. So the questioner is right. And that is regressive. That is harder on the working people, it's harder on the middle class. You know, you can only own so many mansions if you're a billionaire, right? But the sales tax and the income tax better reflect ability to pay, in particular income tax. There have been efforts to increase the state share of funding to schools in the past. There was a citizens referendum which passed in 2016. Partially implemented, but not fully. We need to do that. We need to fully implement it. We need to fund the homestead exemption better. We have done some of that in the last budget. I'm very proud of that. And the last budget also increased the property tax fairness credit. All of those programs are very important, and we need to do more.
Awesome. Thank you, Seth. Toni, same question to you, and I'll just read it again so you have it. And it is, how, by serving in the state legislature, might you assist in alleviating the tax burden on the local communities and counties as they are property tax dependent? So go for it.
Sure. I really like what Seth said about the homestead exemption, the expansion of that. That was awesome. I mean, I saw it in my taxes, so it was great. Some quick digging today, finding out that Saginaw County itself has we rank number 346 out of like 3,100 counties in the country for highest median taxes. So just this county alone, it takes about 3.6% of the average income, family household income, just to pay property taxes, which are about $2,200 on an average home a year. So when you look at it and you break it down like that, that's a lot of money divvied up monthly on top of a mortgage and everything else that you are trying to do. And I guess for me, because I don't have a solution, I right off the top, I would just ask why. I really need to know why it's so high before I feel like I can offer some sort of solution as to say, well, the money should be coming from sales tax, or it should be coming more from the state, or it should be coming from the federal government, whatever the answer is. So I feel like for me, it's like a data mining experiment where you know, if I got the opportunity to go up to Augusta, that's the first thing that I would ask is I want to know why. I want to know the reason why it's so high, what's costing so much, why is Maine so expensive, why is Saginaw County, why is Topsham so expensive? Like drilling down and figuring out from the top down the reasons why before you can really figure out a good solution on it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Toni. Denise, do you need the question or are you all set?
I'm all set.
Beautiful. Then fire away.
Great. So I'm really well aware from my time on the town finance committee that it's very difficult to reduce property taxes, and we can't alleviate the burden of property taxes without help from the state. That's because the discretionary spending on the part of the town is extremely limited. And most of the town spending, over 75%, goes to our schools. And there's a very, very limited amount that the towns can actually make a difference on, particularly when you take into account contracted personnel services. So it's very difficult. So since I've been in the legislature, I've fought really hard for increases to revenue sharing. I've had at least 3 bills supporting revenue sharing increases. And I would like to see revenue sharing continue to move back up, although we do need some help from the federal government during this pandemic time. There is no question that the fact that Topsham was able to reduce the property tax burden slightly this year was in part because the state increased both its share of school expenditures to 51% of the cost of state education, or almost 51%. And we increased revenue sharing to, I think it was 3.5% this year, with a plan to continue to move it all the way up to where it should be at 5%. So I'll continue to fight for those increases in revenue sharing. I'm sorry, Cory, one more second. I've worked closely with Sheriff Murray and with the jail authority, trying to help with jail funding, which is one of the biggest costs we have in the county for county expenses. And that is an issue that the legislature still has to grapple with appropriately.
Now I win the award. All right. Each of you will also get an additional 30 seconds after we hear from Allison and then Jeff. So Allison, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So as a select board member, I'm well aware of, and very familiar with the property tax issue and the county budget. And one of the things that I think Seth mentioned, or maybe Denise mentioned, ever since the pandemic shut us down, we've been meeting weekly with the sheriff and the EMA administrator. And so I've learned we've been really kept on top of what's been happening and what the county is responsible for. And I have a deep appreciation for that. One of the suggestions was collaboration and consolidation. And that's been something I've been encouraging ever since I've been on the board. Yes, but we're already doing it. I mean, let's think about the Two Bridges Jail is one example of consolidation. The sheriff in Saginaw County, is responsible for police protection for many of our towns. I'm also a big fan of consolidation of EMS services and first responders. I led a discussion this year before we shut down in the legislature in the municipal caucus about consolidation, some of the problems faced by EMS services and the need for regional services.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Allison. Remember to unmute this time. Fool me thrice. All right, Jeff, floor is yours. 90 seconds, sir.
So, as working on the Dresden budget review for a number of years and also being in the legislature for 4 years, the schools are eating the town budgets alive, which is what's driving the property taxes in a lot of the rural towns. So the EPS formula for the state, for the school budget coming from the state is, I don't know who understands this. I've only had it explained to me once well. That was from Vicki Raymond from RSU too. So the state needs to start looking at maybe picking up instead of 51%, the 55%, which was passed years ago, which really has never come to fruition. And we need to identify what the 55% means, because our teachers, God bless them, especially in this pandemic, have been working extra hard in their state retirement, and they're under state retirement. So if we can look at funding the schools more through the state, that would give the municipalities more money to share with the jails. Our municipality right now does mutual aid with all the fire services. We worked on jail funding. I worked actually with Denise and Seth on it 4 years ago. We passed some great jail funding because the prisoners are moved from counties to counties. So there's a lot of moving parts there. And when we looked at where we're going to find money for the schools and the state budget, we have to take a holistic look at the complete state budget. There's some great programs out there, but are they being underutilized or are they just outdated? And these are things that we have to look at, especially with a looming budget crisis of $600 million coming rapidly at us, that the next legislature is going to probably be the first thing they deal with, is to stabilize the state budget, because we can't print money like the feds. So that's some thoughts, and I look forward to catching up on them.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. I do want to give you each 30 seconds to add something more. But before we do, and I know this is unplanned, but can someone I don't know this answer, and I think maybe one of you do. How did we get to the 55% number? And I ask that because we've had Republicans, we've had Democrats, we've had independents that have all been in the Blaine House since that passed, and we haven't been able to get to that number. So what was the genesis of the 55% number, and was it a realistic number? And then I'll give you all 30 seconds, but I just kind of want this for my own knowledge. So whoever, jump in.
Yeah, the genesis of it was a citizens referendum.
Okay.
That requested the 55% for education from the state, as it got increasingly out of balance, and we leaned more heavily, as Seth said, on the three-legged stool of property taxes, so that the stool was really tipping over because that property tax leg was getting so long. And it was part of the property tax rebellion that took place in the 90s, I would say. Reasonably so, given how out of balance our overall three-legged stool was. And then we moved from that to recognizing that was maybe where we should be.
Well, and you got to also remember that the 55% is an unidentified number. 55% of the school budget for the state. It hasn't been defined at what does that constitute. So it's a revolving, it's an undetermined target. So what do you add into the 55%? So when you talk about it, you have to add, is that pensions? Is that healthcare? Is that liabilities? Special ed's needs have gone up. So there's no balance that's been put on what does 55% mean. And then with the EPS formula, and I would welcome anybody to explain it because I can't, needs to really be holistically looked at to how that comes to 55%. And is that 55% for the towns or the counties, or is that per capita? So it's an undefined number through the Department of Education. And that's really what needs to be looked at if we're going to fix property taxes on the school budget.
Beautiful.
Cory, can I add to that, the history question? Just to bring it forward from, Denise was referring to a referendum that happened in 2004. It was question 1A in June of 2004. And the municipal association representing towns and cities, and the education association, school boards and teachers said, this is crazy. We're spending too much in property taxes. The state needs to do its part and do it. And it passed overwhelmingly. And the response from Augusta at the time was, well, it was sort of similar to what Jeff was talking about. Well, it's because you're spending too much on schools. stop spending so much on schools. Then we went to the whole issue of regionalizing, right? And there was a big push to regionalize and cut school spending. LD1 was passed, which we all remember every year when at town meeting when we exceed the limit. And so basically, nothing happened. The people said do it, and it didn't get done. And so out of frustration in 2016, a new referendum came forward. It imposed a 2% surtax on incomes over 360,000, and it passed in a very high turnout election. It was narrow, but it did pass. Following that, the legislature said, well, we don't really like the tax part, but we'll try to at least do more for education. So the tax piece that the people had enacted was undone, and fortunately we were in pretty good times then. The economy was doing well, sales and income taxes were coming in, and we were able to put more money towards the schools. But the funding mechanism went away, and so here we are. We're going into a recessionary time. Sales are down, incomes are down, and therefore the state revenues are down because we depend on sales and income tax. So looking forward, I am concerned. I'm concerned about this question. We did some great things in the last legislature. We can talk more about them in our 30 seconds, but the history here is important if we're going to understand how to improve.
Well, and thank you all for doing that, because I think if we're going to have this conversation, it's nice to have that background piece, so we're all kind of building from the same spot. So let's go back into the format now, and let's just give everyone 30 seconds. We're going to go in the same order. So Seth, is there anything else you want to add in your 30 seconds on this tax or tax policy?
Yes, I want to take Richmond as an example. A bunch of us represent Richmond. The last budget passed in 2019 increased revenue sharing by $108.620 for 2019, the fiscal year that started then. And for this past fiscal year, it increased by almost the same amount. That's substantial. That's like a new position plus benefits, very well paid for the town, or giving that money back to the taxpayers. RSU2, which by the way, I think is what Richmond will do. RSU2 received an additional $2.5 million that can be also used to reduce taxes across the RSU. And there may be some decisions to make about improving education. That's the choice of the RSU school board and the taxpayers. The homestead exemption increased from 20,000 to 2,000, to 25,000. So that's about a $97 reduction for a Richmond homeowner. And finally, many more people do qualify for the property tax relief program, the property tax fairness credit. About 13,000 Mainers are eligible. That's worth up to $975 per taxpayer. Yep. That's statewide, and not everyone qualifies in Richmond, but some folks in Richmond will definitely be better off there. So all told, we took some really positive steps in our last biennial budget. Again, I'm concerned about the future, but looking back, I think we were able to do something without raising taxes, and by the way, also adding money to the rainy day fund, and I'm proud of that.
Awesome. That was a little over 30 seconds. So what we're going to do is just, I think it's an important topic, and I don't think we need to rush it if I mean, this is a big thing that affects all of us. So I'm just going to give Toni that same amount of time. So Toni, go to 30 seconds. I'll start interrupting when you get to the time that Seth got to. But is there anything else that you want to add further on taxation?
I'll make it really easy for you. I don't have anything to add.
Oh, well, then there we go. Denise.
Thanks, Cory. Tax policy is one of my big interests. I've spent some time studying it. I am concerned, as Seth said, about the future revenue situation, and we're going to have to think carefully and act carefully around that. But Seth's right. We made some really good progress in this last session that actually enabled the town of Topsham to reduce our property taxes slightly this year. Some of that has to do with more money for schools, and some of it has to do with more money that went to towns and revenue sharing. And so we've got to keep trying to hold that line and not let the property tax absorb all of the problems that we're going to be facing in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Denise. Allison, anything further
Yeah,
from you? Yeah.
I'll just echo what Denise and Seth have said. I think the work we did in the last legislature, increasing aid to schools, increasing the homestead exemption, increasing revenue sharing, has also resulted in Woolwich after working on my 9th budget, municipal budget, actually a small decrease in in most people's property taxes who took advantage of those things.
Awesome. Allison, thank you. Jeff, you get the final word.
Well, I'm proud to say Dresden's in the black, and it wasn't because of just the great care of the Budget Review Committee. It was all the hard work of the townspeople. We're solvent. We have almost $1 million in a reserve account, which is great. Problem is the RSUs look at that and say we can afford to pay more. Now, when we look at taxes, we really have to be proactive about getting the economy going back again instead of raising revenues. Because when everybody's working, everybody's making more money and wages raise, because there's more competition. So some of it's getting the economy going again. And look, business owners are smart. Walmart can open up and have people in there. Your mom and pop stores can open. Your restaurants can open a little more. Your hotels, look, nobody wants to be the one to be a pandemic spreader, but they also need to open, and which will bring revenues back in. I'm super concerned with what the budget's going to look like, especially with an expected shortfall of $1.4 billion for the next biennium. So if you had $600 million and 1.4, you're looking at $2 billion. We really need to be careful and prudent what we do, and we really need to get the economy going again and get some good paying jobs up here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all. I think that was a long topic, but an important topic. So I just threw the order up in the chat for this next question so that we can kind of so Denise, you're going to be first, and then Toni, Jeff, Allison, and then Seth. And so our next topic is the biggest workforce needs for our businesses. So, and the question is, well, the chamber represents businesses, and for our members, they're facing numerous issues. So Denise, starting with you, what are some of the biggest workforce needs that you see for our businesses, and how would you help them start to solve these issues? You have 90 seconds starting now.
Thank you, Cory. I think I may have misunderstood the question a little bit. I thought that the question was what industry sectors need help right now.
No, that is a separate topic that we could have had, but we actually are jumping around in the order a little bit. So
okay.
Sorry.
Well, in terms of workforce, there is no question that we need more people. I mean, one of the biggest problems we have is we don't have the population who's working age to help our businesses grow. And we really need to attract people to jobs in Maine. So what are some of the ways we can resolve workforce issues? Well, we can offer some good training for people who are changing careers. And we are doing that right now in partnerships between businesses and our community colleges that are going on. I know that in Southern Maine, there was a need for machinists, and the community college in Southern Maine worked hard to create a problem to teach people how to become machinists. And I know that workforce is a huge issue, and attracting people to Maine. I think student debt is an issue with that. I think that finding ways to encourage families to be here and to recognize the lifestyle that Maine has is very, very important for workforce needs. That's all I can offer right now.
No, that's great. That's great. Thanks, Denise. And sorry, yeah, that was a little bit of a curveball, but yeah, no, this is we're jumping around the question list a little bit to try to get to as much as possible. So, Toni, you are
got my prep card, so I'm a little confused.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Toni, so same question to you, and I'll just ask it again. So what are some of the biggest workforce needs you see for our businesses, and how would you help them? 90 seconds.
Sure. So some of the things I would echo the same as Denise. So it would be, the same questions. How do we keep how do we keep young families here? But something to backtrack a little bit to me would be, how can we start in the high school level to entice our high school kids to stay? And so I think what's really important is to be able to offer those technical school opportunities, like she mentioned, machinists, plumbers, technicians, HVAC, all of those jobs that have awesome wages, generally are privately contracted, and you can work for some really awesome companies. And I mean, in all honesty, I work for a small, technically a tech company, IT contractor in a way. We do low voltage cabling. So we use technicians, and they are very, very hard to find. Very hard to find qualified people who want to do the job. And I'm, not to toot the horn of the company I work for, but they're awesome. It's a great company, and we can't find people. So I guess trying to remediate the gap between the kids in school and giving them those other options that aren't just, oh, go to college, and giving them the ability to maybe pair with small businesses locally, do internships, maybe as a part of their curriculum. Just think outside the box in terms of that. Don't, like, maybe not necessarily target those college kids, but target them before they decide to go to college, because they may not go to college. They may do something else. And so if we can capitalize on that and hopefully keep them wanting to stay at that age, then maybe we'll have a greater turnout of younger families in the state with the workforce, higher wages, butterfly effect. So
that's great. Toni, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that was something we talked about in our one-on-one interviews. Speaking of that, general public, if you haven't seen the one-on-one interviews with all of these candidates, you really, really should. It's about 15 or 20 minutes with each of them, getting really in depth on the things they care about. So Toni, thank you for that. Jeff, you are up next. I think you got the question. If you need me to repeat it, let me know.
Oh, I've got the question. So skills training in high school is very important because it helps lead to apprenticeships. When just a quick story, we used to hire almost all our kids out of the vocational schools in high school, and they were great because they were trained and they came out as apprentices. We can't do that now. It's not allowed. So the state stepped in and did something, and you can't recruit out of the high schools now. Well, that needs to be worked on. But one of the things that we could do to encourage kids to stay here is we're awful hard on the elderly or the retirees. When grandma and grandpa leave and go to a state like South Carolina where there's no taxes, next thing you know, the kids go down to visit them, and they're like, hey, this is great. The weather's good. There's high paying jobs. They stay. So we lose kids through attrition that way. Maine Maritime's great. They teach tax advantage. My son got his 4-year power engineering degree, and he apprenticed someplace, and we haven't seen him back in the state of Maine then. So we need to encourage businesses to come here, and some of it's our tax structure. We're the 10th highest tax state in the nation per capita, which is tough because we do have 1 million miles of road and we have all the frost conditions, which eats into the budget. So we have to balance that with skills training, apprenticeships, and then, work on our tax structure and make it so companies want to come here so we can have good paying jobs. Yep. That's how we start keeping our kids here.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jeff. Allison, floor is yours.
I haven't made a mistake on the muting thing yet. I'm so excited. I think the first thing we can do is something that Toni alluded to, is to listen to businesses and listen to what they need. One of the things that's been successful in our area is a number of public-private partnerships, for instance, with BIW and SMCC for various jobs training. The University of Maine system is working with a number of businesses to provide PPE, wind, wood technologies. In the high schools, I was proud to support a bond for increasing funds for CTEs. I've also been proud to work with Jobs for Maine's Graduates, which provides a number of experiences for kids in high school, whether or not they go to college or go to a trade school or get some other sort of secondary training. The other thing in terms of workforce needs, identified is early childhood. Healthcare services are another set. It's not just the trades. And then finally, since I teach at college, I'll say two things. One is I'm well aware that not every kid belongs in college. And also one of the things that we do really well is to teach creative and quick problem solving, because I think that's another thing that will keep you alive in a business into the future and thinking outside the box.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. Seth, your 90 seconds starts now.
So this is a critical issue as a former educator and also as someone who's working in the business world now. There was a report that came out, I think it was just last week, where the projections for the next 8 years are that Maine loses an awful lot of jobs. I think the number was 16,000. That's actually a demographic shift. That's because the baby boomers are aging into retirement age and we are not bringing up enough young people. We could seal the border right now, not let any of our young people out, and we would still be having this problem. That's what the projections are based on. So we really need more young, vibrant Mainers and families to come. There are a lot of ways that we can do that. Affordable housing is one, certainly. Just being more welcoming is another. But there are specific occupations where we can do more to train the workforce that we expect to need. Healthcare is a big one. That was mentioned, I think. Food and hospitality. We continue to be a destination for tourism. That will continue. STEM fields, and I work in a STEM related business, also critical. And then occupations like legal or engineering, where people can do their work from anywhere as long as they have good broadband and can come and enjoy our wonderful state, but provide their services to anywhere in the world. Maine can do a lot there. So this is just a few examples. Workforce is something I've done a lot with. I was the chair of the Joint Select Committee on Maine's Workforce and Economic Future in 2012 when I was Majority Leader. We had a great bipartisan bill, which actually won the President's Award from the Maine Development Foundation. And this is something I think we all need to give a lot of thought to. I'm proud of my work in this area, but our job is not done, and we need to think very carefully and strategically about the workforce of the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Seth. It is the respond further time. This we're going to give you each 30 seconds to add anything to your previous answer, and we're going to go in the same order. So I'm going to try to stick you to as close to 30 seconds as I can, but we'll start with Denise. Denise, 30 seconds. Once you unmute is when we'll start the clock. There we go.
Thank you, Cory. I just want to talk for a moment about Vocational Region 10, which is the vocational school in our area. I've been there a bunch of times. They have some great programs. I know they work hard to provide internships. I think there are two issues with the way the vocational schools are organized right now. One is the problem of bias on the part of students against the voc schools. They think only dummies go there. And we have to do more to make sure that kids understand that that's a way to a good living. So I think that dealing with the bias against the voc schools is important. The other issue is the way that we fund regional vocational schools right now by asking each sending school to give them money. And the problem with that is that their facilities are not covered under that. And we have a real problem with facilities for CTEs. That's one thing that bond helped to deal with, but it's not enough. We need to do more to create better facilities for vocational students.
Thank you, Denise. Toni, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to say anything you want to add on to this topic.
I 100% agree with Denise that there is kind of a stigma around the voc schools in a way where people do think it's kind of, the dummies, I guess you could say, go there, which is so not true. And breaking that stigma is huge. And then also creating more accessibility within the schedules of the students in high school to be able to give them more opportunity to be able to arrange or have the arrangements made for them so that they can attend the voc school, because it is not, near the high school. So it would require a certain level of accessibility as far as transportation, for instance. And so breaking those barriers down in itself would be phenomenal. And then something else I wanted to add was that I'm working on a small business, essentially a leads group in the area to kind of try to bring the small business owners together so that we can collaborate in other ways to become more community oriented, and maybe try to figure out ways to include more community members, more students, or down the line, work with the school system to bridge that gap so that our kids have the chance to kind of get out and do some different things before they decide their path in life, from going from asking to go to the bathroom to what do you want to do the rest of your life. So
Awesome. Thank you, Toni. Yeah, and the chamber's got some ideas on that too, which again, I love talking with all of you about that. Jeff, is Jeff? Yes, Jeff, you get to go first this time. You got 30 to 60 seconds, let's say.
32, 60 seconds. That's great, Cory. So when we talk about good paying jobs and for our high schoolers and our kids coming out of college to keep them, I believe broadband and internet access was brought up. There's a lot of, I believe Seth brought it up, and that is a key component to getting school businesses to come here. You know, the tax structure is one thing, but people will come here. I mean, we have a beautiful state, a great way of life, but they've got to be able to work. I mean, if anything that this pandemic has taught us, that there's people who don't need $5,000 a month office space, and they're coming here and they're working if they can get on the internet. We see it in this district all the time because we do have internet available for most of the towns and most of the areas. So that's one of the things to get businesses here, and then you can have good jobs, and with good jobs, you can have skilled labor, and skilled labor is good for the kids, and it will help keep people here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Allison, your 30 to 60 seconds begins now.
So, oh, and I'm unmuted again. Ha! I agree with what everyone else has said, and the only thing I'll add is that because Denise had mentioned student debt, is we have a program in Maine, the Maine Educational Opportunity Tax Credit, that helps pay student loans back, especially if you're in a STEM field, and that's something that has not been advertised as well as it should be, but that's sort of been my goal, is to advertise that and to also tweak it so that it works more well into the future.
Awesome. Allison, thank you. Seth, final word, 30 to 60 seconds.
I want to agree with what everyone has said, and just thank Nancy Weed, who I see is on the call. I think she retired as Region 10's director, but Denise was talking about the important work being done there in our vocational schools, our technical schools, and the work that I've seen students doing when I visited has really been tremendous. I was a little jealous that my own son, wasn't able to participate in those programs because he didn't choose the Region 10 path, but it was it's kind of either or, and I've been wishing that he could have more opportunities. He's very mechanically inclined. He's trying to learn how to fix an old outboard engine as we speak. So I think that there are great career opportunities if we can help young people that have that inclination to develop those skills, and Nancy's work has been great. I also just want to quickly mention the clean energy economy. I see Bill Ferdinand is on the call. He represents the independent system operator of our electrical grid in New England, in Augusta. We are talking about switching to electricity for almost everything if we're going to decarbonize. And everyone that cares about climate and the climate crisis understands that, it's electrification, it's electric vehicles, and it's electric heat pumps that allow us the opportunity to wean ourselves of our dependence on fossil fuels. That means thousands of jobs in the clean energy economy, installing EV charging stations, installing heat pumps, doing weatherization and efficiency retrofits, building the solar and wind and battery, storage farms of tomorrow. So big opportunities there.
Awesome. All right. Next question. We're moving on. So the next category, I was going to put the order in the thing, but it's going to be Allison, and then Jeff, and then Seth, and then Toni, and then Denise. And like I said, I will put that in the chat. And it's going to be about compromise. So sometimes we talk policy, but sometimes we talk about you as a person. I will say I'm going to start sticking pretty tight to the time limits so we can make sure we get a couple extra questions in. But Allison, this goes to you, and then Jeff. Compromise is such a critical piece with so many major issues facing the next legislature. Tell us about a time in your past when you worked with someone who didn't share your views initially, and tell us how you found common ground. Broadly, it's a broad question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just start out by saying my favorite thing is talking to people who don't know what party I'm in. One of my favorite experiences the other day was actually talking to someone at their house and noticed that the house across the street had one of my campaign signs and also a Trump flag. And I think that that's a good sign of someone who's willing to work with anyone. When you work in an academic institution, compromise and bipartisanship and it's really kind of multi-partisanship is what we do. We try to get, we tried to change our history curriculum. And some people were very much in favor of a very American-based history program. And others of us thought that in order to get a history degree, you ought to be able to take a course, you ought to have to take a course that's beyond, that's not just US history oriented. And so we worked on that. We talked about the advantages, the disadvantages, and we worked together and came up with something that perhaps focused a little more on the US side, but also included some of the international focus. And I think that was something that we all felt good about and we can build on. But yeah, I mean, I wear bipartisanship as a badge proudly.
Awesome. Allison, thank you. Jeff, floor is yours. Talk to me about times you've compromised and how you do that.
One of the favorite ones, times that bipartisanship is at its best, is when you can bring people together and it really helps benefit a lot of people. So in my last term in the legislature, we had a bipartisan bill with Erin Herbig, and we were probably about as polar opposites as I usually get. She's a nice lady, and we worked on a PTSD bill for the firefighters, first responders, and our police. That was really great. It brought unanimous support and was signed in by the governor. This bill helps our firefighters, our first responders, who, let's face it, they see some really ugly stuff out there on the road. They're the ones that have to come to your house when your kid's been in an accident or a family member. Some of the stuff they see, they need to be able to get help and just to decompress. So I was really proud to work with Erin Herbig and a number of other legislators on this bill. That was one of my favorites because it worked out really well for our fire service and our police. The other one was flame retardants and furniture, which was a complicated issue, but our firefighters and first responders, again, go into these buildings with all the smoke and everything. And there's a lot of phosgene gas and chemicals being burned off from the products that were made in China and other places that don't have the environmental record we have. So that bill also garnered bipartisan support, and it was supported widely. Ralph Tucker was a great help. We worked that bill together, and it was just a tremendous help, and that was in the Natural Resources and Environment Committee. So those are a couple great examples that I'm really happy to have worked with.
Thank you, Jeff. Seth, compromise question. Floor is yours, 90 seconds.
Well, Cory, it's a great question. And I mentioned earlier the work that we did on the Joint Select Committee on Maine's Workforce and Economic Future and the awards that committee won. I think that was largely because we worked in a very unusual way. Typically what happens is that a sponsor, let's say me, introduces a bill to a committee. The public presents its points of view. There are many lobbyists in Augusta who present their clients' points of view, and then the committee votes. And I should say that mostly works. That, you know, we agree on 85 to 90% of our bills in Augusta. You hear about the ones we don't agree on, but we usually agree. What we did, however, with the Joint Select Committee on Maine's Workforce and Economic Future was we didn't come in with a bill. We came in with a problem, which is how are we going to meet the workforce demands of our future economy, and what can we do better? And we did a lot of listening, and we went to Belfast, and we went to Biddeford, and we went to Bangor, and we held listening sessions, and we heard from local leaders and businesses and workers and educators, and we put together the best ideas, and we voted unanimously, and I believe there were 15 of us from both sides of the aisle, unanimously on a pretty bold comprehensive package, which was then incorporated into the budget and passed overwhelmingly in the year 2014. I think it's time to refresh that work and to go through a similar process with the challenges that we have. That's how you do it. You set aside your own ideas and you listen for the best ideas of others.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, Toni, the question is for you about compromise and working across the aisle, and how do you do that?
Obviously, I don't have any direct experience with it, but in my past life, in a past job, I worked in retail pharmacy, and I can tell you that you had to be very diplomatic in a lot of ways, all day, every day. So, and I've actually heard that from employers in the past, that I am a very diplomatic person. I do well under stress, and I mean, I can't think of a specific scenario, but if I just think of in terms of my everyday life, the way that I run my household is exactly the same way. You've got kids running around and you're making deals all day. Like, it's this for that. You do this and we'll do, you're doing that all day. So on a much smaller, obviously more simplistic scale, but that's, I don't ever aim to be any type of dictator or my way or the highway. For me, I don't want to engage in party politics. I don't like the drama. I don't think it's beneficial. For me, I just want to go and do whatever I can to create the most complete solution that makes the most sense out of whatever the problem is, and get there in the calmest, most level-headed way possible is really my kind of broad strokes answer to the question, I guess.
No, that's great. That's awesome. No, absolutely. Denise, you are up with the same question.
Thank you. And I even unmuted. Yay. Okay. First of all, I want to say that when I worked on the town finance committee, I worked with a guy who a lot of people in Topsham know named Dave Douglas. And Dave and I actually came to agreements on a lot of things. We have a lot of respect for each other. Dave's a really smart guy. And he and I worked hard together on crafting agreements around what the town budget should look like. Secondly, as chair of the Health Coverage Insurance Financial Services Committee, 85% of the bills that came out of our committee this year were unanimous. Not just bipartisan, but unanimous. That means that I worked with my colleagues who are senators and House members, Republicans and Democrats, and we came up with solutions for specific problems that came to us. A bill essentially is a declaration of a problem. And the work that the committee does is to help refine the solution to that problem. The only other thing we sometimes do is agree that it's not a good solution that's offered in the bill, and we kill the bill. So I worked really hard with my colleagues. I sat next to my Republican counterpart in committee, and he and I had some good times, some good laughs together, Dwayne Prescott. I feel pretty confident that I can work well with all of those guys who were on the committee. Had some great conversations with them. And you know, we got a lot of good things done in the Health Coverage Insurance and Financial Services Committee for Maine people this year.
Awesome. Denise, thank you. I don't know if we'll need it, but I do want to honor if anybody wants to add anything further. I don't know if you will or not. So we're going to go around in the same order again. So Allison, anything you want to share? Anything you want
Yeah,
to add?
actually, I will say that 9 years in the select board is a great experience in compromise and working together. And even if, you know, Denise said it's not unanimous, bipartisanship is one thing, unanimity is something else. You can also agree to disagree. And I think that's a valuable skill in the legislature. We have, once we decided on solar panels, for instance, for the municipality, and had people from different edges of the board, we agree to disagree, and then whatever the final vote is at town meeting, we just agree to move forward on that and kind of work together at the other end.
Awesome. Allison, thank you. Jeff, 30 more seconds. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, being on the school board, you can imagine the RSU too, where there's 5 towns from three different counties. It's an interesting perspective of how we spend our money and how we do things. So we have to compromise all the time, but I think my greatest moments in compromise is I've been married 31 years to a beautiful wife, and I have 2 sons, and how to raise them was the biggest compromise we both came to, and it's been a great experience.
There you go. Seth, 30 more seconds. Anything you want to add?
You know, Denise reminded me that I spent 4.5 years on the Bowdoinham Select Board. Many of those years were spent with my friend Brian Hobart, who is a Republican that represented this area in the legislature. And for a time, Brian and I were the only 2 members on the board. There was a vacancy. We decided to wait for, I think it was 5 months for the next regular election rather than holding a special one, because we felt we could agree. And you know what? We did. So, you know, I think we certainly can apply common sense in Maine and come to agreements. It does start with listening. And, you know, I think that's especially important in these divided times.
Awesome. Toni, 30 more seconds.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, great. Denise.
I first want to say that the key is listening. Listening is extremely important if you want to get somewhere, because you have to figure out where the other person is coming from. What are they concerned about? And how can you meet their needs as well as what you see as the solution? So that's really important. Secondly, I beat Jeff. I've been married 39 years and have 5 kids.
There you go.
So I really do know how to compromise.
Well, that's it too. I mean, compromise is everywhere. And I've worked retail before, and Toni, I am right there with you. That's some of the best negotiating I ever did. I used to work in party rental, and it was a lot of brides and grooms and weddings, and yes, lots of compromise. So next question, we're going to go, I am going to try to stick it to the time because we've got closing statements to get to. So you have to really stick to the 90 seconds here, and it's not an easy question to do that. So the question's about the 3 priorities you wish were discussed more. We're going to go Seth, and then Denise, Toni, Jeff, Allison. I will put the order in the comment section after I ask the question, and let Seth to start to answer. So Seth, through your campaigns, you talked to dozens of community members and business leaders about their thoughts on what is needed at the state level. Yet in these forums, we only have time to cover a very limited amount of subjects. What are 3 topics you are passionate about that you wish more people were talking about or aware of? And please, 90 seconds, everybody. Off you go.
Great. Well, I think everyone knows that I'm very passionate about our utilities. I referenced them earlier when speaking about the need to shift to electricity. If we're going to wean ourselves of oil and gas, we really do need to make that switch, and that's how we make our economy more self-sustaining, more independent. Consumer ownership of our utilities will bring down costs substantially. Our utilities are currently owned and controlled by big banks and foreign governments. They are monopolies, and I'd like to talk more about that with anyone interested at any time. Early childhood is another. Research shows that the first 1,000 days of a child's life are the most critical. 85 to 90% of brain development happens then. We need to do more for young families who are supporting those kids and for the children themselves as well. I'm proud to serve on the Success by Six board of the local United Way, and will continue to, as the giraffe says, stick my neck out for kids. But we need to all think about those first 1,000 days in particular, and not just talk about the later education years when frankly you're making up for what you could have done more cheaply earlier on. And finally, I think we really need to talk about why it is that we have a healthcare system which is dependent on employers, which really puts the burden on employers to provide health insurance. I think that's crazy, especially in today's mobile gig economy. It's not working. You could take almost any other developed country's system, plug it in here, and it would be at least somewhat better. Clearly we have a broken system and we need to change it.
Awesome. Thank you, Seth. Denise, 3 priorities you wish were discussed more.
Thank you very much. A lot of Seth's I agree with, but the 3 that I was thinking about that I think are really, really important are childcare. We can't grow our workforce unless we do a better job providing childcare. We really need more and better childcare provisions. And the state really probably needs to get into that game a little bit more. I also think affordable housing is a huge issue that we're not talking about enough, and housing in general, including the issue around apartments and not creating sprawl so that we retain the beauty of our communities, but we have enough room for people who we need here to work here. And thirdly, I'm interested in what a modern tax regimen for both individuals and for businesses should look like. What should it look like? Should it be dependent on taxing big paper machines and that kind of thing? So I really think we have a lot of work to do on creating a more modern tax regimen.
And now I'm unmuted. There we go. Beautiful. Toni, you are up next with 3 priorities that you want to tackle.
To obviously echo Seth and Denise, I wholeheartedly agree with the parental leave and the daycare issues. Figuring out a way to support new parents, and not just moms but dads too, because we know that it's very important that dads do get the opportunity to bond with their babies as well. And I've had 2 kids. I took the full 90 days, and you get a half pay on the last 45. And it's a struggle, even with that type of, I guess you could say, help, but it's, you've paid into it. So, why can't you get the full amount? It almost makes you feel like you're being crucified for wanting to have a family or to be a mom, and it puts parents in bad positions. And to segue into that is to create more favorable environments for our employers. If there's anything we've learned from COVID, it's that we've learned that people can work from home. I work from home, I homeschool, I have 2 kids, and I do a pretty darn good job, if I say so myself, at balancing it all. Not everybody has the capabilities or the ability to do that, but if we can open the gates to making it a more favorable environment so that people have a more work-life balance, that would be something that I would love to see for future generations, which would aid in helping keeping families in the state. Something else is I recently learned that through the school board that 2 RTI teachers were recently taken away from special services and told that they were going to be teaching regular classes. And I actually think that's pretty sad, honestly, in a time like this, in a pandemic, when we have kids that are probably most likely, all of them, even the ones that are doing well in school, struggling. And we're taking services away from those kids that need the special services even more. So to hear that happening really is disheartening to me. And I feel for the families that have to deal with that on top of everything else. And then we just got to figure out a way to remediate that. We really do. Yeah. I hear it a lot from people, and it hurts me to hear that, because nobody wants to see their kids struggle.
Right.
And the last thing is obviously, I just want to protect the Constitution. Second Amendment, your rights, your body, your right, your religious beliefs, all of that. I stand to protect the Constitution. That's how, one of the pillars that I stand on, and one of the main things that I've been kind of driving forward as my campaign goes.
Awesome, Toni. Thank you. Jeff, you're up. 3 priorities that you wish people were discussing more and were more aware of.
The economy, let's face it. If we don't get the economy rolling and get revenues coming back in, all these programs that have been talked about go by the wayside. We're not going to be able to help with childcare or fund our schools if we don't get the economy going. And what do we need to get the economy going? We need businesses to come to Maine. We need to look at our tax structure to allow businesses to come to Maine. We need affordable power, and we need broadband. So that's one issue, but it all rolls together. Seth used the 3-legged stool. Well, that's some of the pillars of the economy. The other one is elderly housing, an important issue. You're hearing it all the time. Nursing facility closes. Where do these people go? People who did well can afford the expensive, high-end nursing homes, assisted living. People who are on the lower end of the spectrum, they're covered by Medicaid. It's the hardworking people who've always had a job, who followed someplace in the middle income. They might be able to afford entry into a nursing facility, but they can't afford the service package. Why is that? And some of it's, their insurance has run out. It's a huge issue, and I don't even want to try and delve into insurance because I'm definitely not an expert. I just know I don't like the bill when I get it. So looking at those 2 pieces, that's a great big piece of the puzzle. And then if we're going to do anything to work with the economy and to help our elderly, we definitely need to work on education and skills training. We need to provide the workforce for the employers. And that's a tough thing. And we want our kids to come back here. We want people to come here. But we need the infrastructure, which is broadband, to work on all of this subject. So I look forward to discussing this further.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Allison, last word is for you, and then we got to get into closing statements.
So three priorities we wish that it was talked about more would be, for me, it's food insecurity. I'm proud to be a part of Good Food for Bath, which I started meeting weekly with. It's a collaboration of places like Salvation Army, the food bank, the Gleaners, as sort of a rapid response team. And as a result of that, I volunteer now at the farmers market on EBT benefits that's matched with USDA benefits. So food security is one. A second one is drug deaths. We're on track to meet or exceed the deaths this year compared to last year. Largely due to fentanyl. I don't know that I've talked to a lot of people about different solutions on that, but I don't have the ultimate answer. And then third, healthcare access. It is something that we talk about a lot, but there are still concerns, as Seth pointed out, tying health insurance to employment, as we saw with the BIW strike. Is not a good solution. We also worked hard on, I have to credit Denise with this, for working with the other legislators and working with DHHS to get standards set up for COVID testing, and also to make sure that people knew that they didn't have to pay for the testing. So I think those 3 things. Obviously, other things like age-friendly housing and other things like that are also important. But
Well, there are no shortage of good issues, and it's almost a sin to ask you to do that in 90 seconds. So thank you for that, guys. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and you each have 2 minutes for a closing statement. I will say in your closing statement, if you don't include how to contact you, we will do that in a lightning round right afterwards. So so take the 2 minutes for all of you. And the order is posted in the chat. So it's going to be Toni, Denise, Allison, Jeff, and Seth. Toni, closing statement. You're first. Go for it.
So I have mentioned before, I have no experience politically, but I don't look at that as any type of disadvantage. I'm a very fast learner. I am a good communicator. I'm an open minded individual. I welcome different thought processes, and I hope to take that and my diplomacy up to Augusta to create some really creative and out of the box change that can really push Maine forward and dig us out of the little hole that we're in right now, to bring those younger families to Maine, to have the ones that are here stay, and to entice more businesses to come here. And I also want to do, my part, try to help out small businesses. And by doing that through community efforts like the group that I mentioned, the Leads group, getting the small businesses together so that we can all collaborate and come up with ways to either lean on each other or just other ways to get out in the community to support initiatives that are going on locally and support our kids. I really just want to be a voice in Augusta that is reasonable and common sense, and do what I can to make positive change. If anybody's interested in getting a hold of me, I have a Facebook. You can reach me at Toni for Maine. If you search it, it's TONI, the number 4, Maine, MAINE, and I have a Gmail account. It's Toni for Maine, TONI, the number 4, Maine, MAINE, at gmail.com. I get back to people very quickly. So yeah, any questions or anything like that, I will address them as soon as possible.
Awesome, Toni. Thank you so much. Do stay on the line. Actually, all the candidates stay on the line for something a little bit after. But thank you, Toni, so much. Denise, your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to use my 2 minutes to answer a question that was in the chat. The question was, what did I do when child care providers asked for help with language in a bill on fingerprinting? Well, what I did was I attended a meeting that the child care providers brought together, and I brought with me Drew Gatine, who was the former chair of the HHS committee that was dealing with that bill, and was the current chair of the Appropriations Committee, which is the final decider on all those issues. And I sat down and I listened. Now, I just feel that we can disagree on things, and that's not the same as not listening. There are times that we're going to listen to our constituents and we're not going to agree with them, because we have to follow our conscience, we have to follow the evidence, as well as the interests of all the constituents. Just because some constituents have a particular opinion doesn't mean that the other constituents don't have a different opinion. So I just want to say that, and say that I will always listen. I will always communicate with you, whether you agree with me or not. So thank you very much to everyone who's on the call. I appreciate your time. And whether you agree with me or not, I will represent you.
Thank you, Denise. Let's see, next is Allison. Allison, you've got your closing statement, 2 minutes, starting right now.
All right. So thanks for doing this. I will say we face some really hard decisions in the next couple of years in the legislature, but I can't wait to be part of the solution. We're going to need steady and experienced leadership. And in these past 8 months, I've spent hours on the phone, on emails, on Zoom calls, on webinars, finding answers, listening to and finding answers for the people in our district. This hard-earned experience has given me a close-up look on how this has affected Maine, and it gives me confidence that I know I know what it takes to help pull us out of the pandemic and this recession. along with the listening skills and the working together with everyone else. So we have the short-term work of safely recovering from the pandemic. And that means getting small businesses and schools back on track, getting our people back to work, keeping our public health infrastructure intact and our social safety net intact. Also, there's a fair bit of long-term work, as we've talked about, attracting and keeping people in Maine. And that's going to mean broadband. It's going to mean reducing energy costs with an eye towards environmental friendliness. It's going to mean quality schools. It's going to mean property tax relief, and it's going to mean housing for our aging population. In these unprecedented times, Mainers have been flexible, courageous, and we care for one another. This is who we are. And so I'm honored to be doing this work, and I'd be honored to earn your support to continue to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Allison, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, your 2 minutes, sir. Start right now.
Well, thank you, Cory, and the chamber for hosting this. So I have a lot of life experiences that I think make me the best person for this job. I had a troubled past as a youth, and was able to find a good mentor, police chief that was retired, who really helped me see light from going forward and creating more trouble for myself or becoming publicly involved. So I know the feelings when somebody's going through substance abuse, or a parent is trying to get a spouse or a child off substance abuse. I have the compassion because I know how they both feel. I also work with my community, and I have always taken everybody's call and always will. I mean, I still do today. And it's the goal of finding people the right connection. Whether it's a business owner trying to find who to talk to at Maine Revenue, or a parent that just needs some help with DHHS, whether it's a foster care or an elderly person just trying to figure out where we're going to be for housing. I've helped all these people. I've done it in the past. And that's the job as a legislator, is to make these connections for people to maneuver the state bureaucracy. As it is daunting. If anyone's ever gone to the website and tried to find a state agency in the right number, it can be frustrating, especially if you're in a turmoil time in your life and you're stressing out. So I think that one of the reasons why I'm the better candidate is because I've also signed the front of the check most of my life. So I understand how budgets work really well. And when money's good, it's great to have a lot of programs and be able to afford them. But when money's tight and we're looking at revenue shortfalls, we need to know which programs need to be cut. But we need to also look at what we have to keep the social safety net so our elderly and our children are safe. And that's a really important subject, and to keep people safe, because there's a lot of drugs out there. Our police officers need a lot of help, and so don't our EMS and fire people. Because when budgets are cut, the municipalities suffer also. So we need somebody with a strict that can do the job and be careful.
Awesome, Jeff. Thank you, sir, for having to cut you off there. Sorry about that, but
That's all
thank
right.
you. Seth, final 2 minutes is yours.
Great. Well, thank you, Cory. And it's been great, as always, to visit with you and through you with the chamber. Thanks again to the sponsors. This was a great conversation tonight. And, you know, I really think that we all are beset right now with negativity. That you can't turn on the television without hearing, negative accusations being flung back and forth. And people are pretty beaten down right now. And, there's rising inequality. People are concerned about climate. They're concerned about global instability. They're concerned about the pandemic. There's a lot of fear right now, and there's a lot of negativity. And I believe that Maine has what it takes to rise above that. I think we've been doing it in many respects through our work together in Augusta and also in the communities over the past couple of years. make Maine strong, to take advantage of our strengths and build on them. And I think it really is just a moment where we need to remember to support one another, to listen to one another, to take care of our neighbors, and through building communities to build our state. We need to also have confidence that we can do great things, that Mainers have an incredible work ethic, that we can be a real destination for biotech businesses like the one that I work for an incredible education system that makes families want to stay here and raise their children here, and that produces the workforce of tomorrow and the businesses of tomorrow. We can do healthcare better. We can do energy better. There's nothing we can't do if we really believe that we are capable. And there are people, frankly, who want us to think that we can't. That no, you can't possibly do that yourself. I will have to do it for you. Only I can solve it. And that's what we call autocracy. That is how we get away from democracy and into autocracy, which is not what America is about, which is certainly not what Maine is about. And certainly the communities I represent are not about that either. So we need to have hope. We need to believe in ourselves. As Lincoln once said, in another troubling time, as our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. I think there are very creative policy solutions out there if we look for them, and if we have the confidence to go forward. Thank you.
Awesome, Seth. And I'm just going to echo that and say, we have 5 incredible candidates here. We have 6 in these races, and I wish Peter could have joined us tonight to share his views. But I do want to thank each and every one of you, and just say, unfortunately, only 3 of you are going to win the seat for the races that you're in. But I hope that we all work together, because I think we've got some really common goals through the chamber and through the service that you can all provide. So I hope that we all do stay connected. I do want to give, if anybody on the call or anybody watching the video wants to connect with any of these folks, just go around again. Toni, I know you gave yours. It is well, you tell me, Toni, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Facebook is probably the fastest. You could just search Toni for Maine, TONI, the number 4, Maine, MAINE, or my Gmail account, toniformaine@gmail.com.
Awesome, Toni. Thank you. Stay on the line for me if you could. Denise,
Sure.
People want to contact you. How can they do that?
They can call me at home. That's 729-4018, or they can email me at Denise 4 State Rep, and that's 4 FOR, not the number, Denise 4 State Rep @gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you, Denise. Allison, how can people contact you? Allison might be frozen. Allison, move, do something. Okay. Allison, if you come back, just butt in. Jeff, how can people contact you if they need to? Oh, Allison. I see Allison.
So, something happened. Speaking of broadband, right? It's the first time that's happened in a while, actually. Best way to reach me, my cell phone number is 319-4396, and my email address is aheplerwoolwich@gmail.com.
Yes, thank you, Allison. Jeff, best way to contact you?
Best way to contact me is my cell. I always answer it. It's 441-3006. You can go to my Facebook, Jeff Pierce for State House 53, or Jeffrey K. Pierce @gmail.com.
Beautiful. And Seth, last but not least, best way to contact
my
you?
personal cell is 522-1609. You can call or text anytime. My email address is bhamberry@gmail.com. That's short for Bowdoinhamberry, bhamberry, all one word. And my Facebook is Rep Seth Berry.
Awesome. So, hey, I do want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our sponsors one more time: Midcoast Parkview Health, Priority Real Estate Group, Remax Riverside, Barnard Financial, Riley Insurance, Bath Savings, and Sightlines. And I want to thank our guests for joining us as well. Candidates, stay on the line. I want to talk to you about how we're going to distribute this video. Those of you watching at home, goodbye. Going to stop the recording soon.